Hello, everyone. Welcome to WrestleWatch, the only podcast that focuses on the world of free agency in professional wrestling. I am Doug.
And I'm Ryan here on this, it's a gloomy day here in Baltimore for me. How's it going for you, Doug?
It's not too bad. It was kind of rainy yesterday, but temperatures are going to go up. I think we're supposed to hit the 70s and 80s this week, so,
That's
fine.
nice for you.
Yeah, but it's not bad. As usual, I'm here with my coffee, inside, so it's all fine.
That's good to hear. As we're looking at the tier list this week, we've had a number of changes. We have had a number of people dropped off the tier list. Where do you want to start, Doug?
Well, I think that this show, we have plenty to talk about with just the people that have shifted around the tier list. Some of them I agree with. Most of them I agree with.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them I disagree with pretty strongly. So I think we're going to have a nice discussion. And some of them me and you disagree with pretty strongly. So
yeah, I think there's a few people that I would love for you to explain to me why they're being added to the tier list.
Sure. Absolutely. Would love to.
So I think that we can start, though, with some people that we totally agree with why they're being removed from the tier list this week.
Yes.
Let's start off with Finn Balor, because that's the most clear-cut one, I think.
Finn Balor was currently at, he was at C tier, right?
Correct. Yeah, he was a C tier boy.
Yes, and now he has been removed by the voting committee. And
yes. Yeah.
So what we've determined is that he is no longer a free agent. Finn Balor has said, "I've resigned. I'm going to be sticking around." So, as far as I'm considered, I have no reason to believe that he's lying. I think he's telling the truth. So because of that, he's off and he's staying with WWE. So that is the first domino that has fallen from the Magnificent Seven.
And I will also point out with Finn Balor that some of the reporting that came out after he tweeted out that he was going to be signing and staying with WWE. I remember kind of hilariously SRS, Sean Ross Sapp's reaction was kind of that meme of, he just tweeted it out. I was working on this story for weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So the story there is that Finn has been re-signed to a multi-year contract that was characterized as big money. So the kind of tea leaf reading of it all is the change in the guard at WWE of the people that are looking at trying to re-sign talent. They moved and shifted around some people to possibly give more of a focus again to the talent that they're trying to keep at WWE, which we'll get into when we talk about upcoming here. We'll definitely be talking about Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch tonight, or today, tomorrow. Whenever you're listening to this podcast, we'll talk about it.
Yes. And I think the big thing with him is it also in that report, it also said it's like he was on a list of people that AEW was kind of keeping an eye on to potentially try to grab.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, which is very funny because once again, I famously have my list of 7 male wrestlers in WWE that I think AEW are going to go for. Finn Balor was on that list of 7. So yeah, I am very amused that I believe that Tony Khan has simply just hacked my computer and stole my list. And I think going off that.
I think it's pretty obvious that that's exactly what's happened. It makes sense with the whole Chicago thing included. Yeah.
Yes, he knows what he's doing. He knows who to hack. He's got the resources to do it.
He knows all about those bots.
Yes,
and their opinions. Yeah.
Tony, just stay out of my PayPal account.
or jump into it, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, it's true. You feel free to pop in and leave something there. I'm not gonna argue with you there.
Yeah, please donate to the cause. Everybody should, but especially Tony Khan. So yeah, that's the long and short of it with Finn Balor. We had him as a C tier, which was a 50-50, which I think based off of the information that we had going into him resigning, I think that was a valid position to have him in. I think that it kind of was like a 50-50 toss-up with a bunch of these people right now, just because of how many people there are in WWE that were in this position of their contract is about to run out and we haven't even offered them anything yet. So I think that he might be the first domino of this group to see who might be the easiest to get re-signed. We're talking about a group that includes Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch and Kevin Owens and a few other people. I think that he's the first one that was the easiest one to get a nice, healthy deal for. What do you think, Doug?
Yeah, I agree. And I do think it does. It makes me wonder what's going on that they were able to get this done so quietly and quickly with Finn Balor, but
Yeah.
they seem to not necessarily have that same ability with Drew or
Hmm.
Seth or Becky, that we're getting these, reports that it's like, oh, I'm like weeks away from my contract being up and going into free agency. It could be that they're just, as Becky said, she knows her worth and she really is going to
Hmm.
test out the free agency because she probably knows that she's going to get a better deal with that. And she will.
Yeah.
Like even if she stays in WWE, if she goes to free agency and AEW offers her a big money deal, that's just more leverage for her. It makes all the sense in the world. Um, and I could see maybe Finn Balor just didn't want to do that for one reason or another.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just, that's a headache that he doesn't want to deal with because I get it. It is kind of a headache to have to go through the negotiation process and you're playing both sides. But if you got the stomach for it, you're going to get the best deal you can. And I think that he just maybe wanted to he was offered a really comfortable deal from WWE
Hmm.
and it worked. But once again, he was offered a deal.
Yes.
I don't know that it sounds like Becky, as of that Ariel Helwani interview, was not offered a deal.
Yeah, and that was right around the time when they started doing those shifts with the managerial personnel that were looking at the contract. So it's definitely possible that since then Becky Lynch has had something offered. We don't know because nothing else has been reported since then. But I would say that this is possibly the clarion of maybe they're taking this a little bit more seriously to try to keep these people before their contracts actually expire and they get out of the we'll call it an exclusive negotiating window, as it
Yes.
were.
Yes.
Um, so, Doug, any more thoughts about Finn Balor, or should we move on to the next person that has been removed from the tier list for signing to a company?
Let's go to the next one.
All right. So this weekend, TNA had their Rebellion pay per view in Las Vegas. There were a few people that showed up out of nowhere for a few of them, but one person that was not surprising at all to see there at Rebellion was Mike Santana. He was at A tier for us, but this week we have removed him from the tier list because he has officially signed with all the graphics and all the jazz and all the pizzazz with TNA. Doug, how do you think about that? What do you think about that?
I think that Santana is someone that we all expected to pop up somewhere else. I mean, more likely than not, it was going to be a TNA. There was like a slight shot that he might end up in WWE,
Mm-hmm.
but we've known for a while that he's seen himself as someone who wants to be more of a singles wrestler and get away from the tags. And that was one of his big motivations to get out of AEW, is because he really wanted to be a strong singles run. And that's just something that would have been very, very hard to do in current AEW.
Mm-hmm.
So I get it, and I'm not stunned at all. So this is exactly what I expect to happen. This is why he's been in A tier. Everyone was expecting this to happen. So good on him.
Yeah, I think that it's finally him getting exactly what he was wanting, which is something that is really great about the current free agency market. Is the fact that you can go somewhere else to get what you want fairly easily, I think, right now for somebody that has his kind of talent level. And those are usually the kinds of talent that we are looking at and putting on the tier list, or the kinds of talent that are probable to get good contracts and good interest from major companies. And I think Mike Santana proved that with getting a long term, it seems, deal signed with TNA. Even if he wasn't getting that from one of the other promotions, he was getting it from TNA. So that's great for Mike Santana to get what he thinks his value was.
I agree.
The other person that we've removed from the tier list this week was one MJF, Maxwell Jacob Freeman. So this one's a little bit different from the last two. MJF has been on our tier list in F tier for months. Um, and part of it is due to the kayfabe nature of his contract. It has been a point of storyline of his contract expiring in 2024. It has been generally believed that his contract was re-signed in the summer of 22 after the kind of walkout at Double or Nothing with the Wardlow match. And then he did the Los Angeles pipe bomb promo. But we had been keeping him on the tier list just because, well, we don't know if it's confirmed or not, if he's actually resigned or if it's just a kayfabe he hasn't resigned. This week, our committee, though, decided that they wanted to just remove him from the tier list, get rid of the kind of distinction, consider that he's been re-signed to AEW. I believe that both of us, when we were looking at it, we both were kind of wanting to keep him on the tier list. Is that right, Doug?
Yeah, I think I had him he was at F tier. I wanted to keep him at F tier. I don't think he's leaving.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I believe he did re-sign some type of contract before he returned at All Out 2022.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of deal it was. I assume it had some type of extension on it. We know that the reports were that it was for a lot more money.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, if that was the case, it should have some type of extension on it. Therefore, I think he's still there. I have no reason to believe he's not. I know that they took him off the roster page and things like that, but that doesn't mean anything. And at this point, he's very clearly signed. I think he's signed.
Yeah, I think that he signed. I had also wanted to keep him on an F tier just because there's always that thing with him where you don't know sometimes what the line between the kayfabe and the real is. But we try here to keep it separated because sometimes storyline does not equal actual contract news. And there are some people that might have gone up and down, or we had considered this week for movements that there might have been some storyline reasons why some people might have wanted to move them up and down. I think like Becky Lynch is a good example of that. This week she won a championship in WWE, which was vacated by Rhea Ripley. Well, it's not necessarily because she's going to resign. That's a very quick need booking decision.
Yeah,
Uh,
even and real quick on that, even if Becky didn't resign, I think that's still the smart move because you're moving that onto Becky, and then you could
yes.
transition it to someone else if she's like leaving imminently. And at least I think that will at least help the title.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I think that when you look at it as an analysis of her relative value to the company, yeah, I think that that's like a perfectly valid thing to look at this booking decision and say, obviously, Becky is considered valuable to WWE, so they're going to fight for her probably in negotiations. That makes sense. But I wouldn't say in the kayfabe kind of world, her getting a championship means she's going to stay. In the same way that MJF just disappearing doesn't mean that he's actually leaving.
I agree.
Let's go from the top of the tier list and just work our way down, and we can see what updates we have as we go down the tier list. Does that work for you, Doug?
Is that all for removals?
That's all for the people that have been removed from the tier list. Yeah.
Okay. So we will start at the top and make our way down. But first, why don't we get a coffee break?
Okay. Yeah, that works for me.
All right.
We'll be right back with the WrestleWatch podcast. Stay tuned. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the WrestleWatch podcast. This is Ryan. We just went over the people that we dropped off the tier list this week.
So I think the next step is we're going to go through the current tier list. I think we'll just start at the top and just work our way down. So right now, the current S tier is going to be Kamille, Jacob Fatu, and Motor City Machine Guns. These are three people we believe are either signed or imminently about to be signed or going to be debuting like any moment. I mean, if you want, you could read the actual S tier description that we get the official one.
Yeah, the official description that we're going with at the current moment is that they're a talent who are signed to a new promotion, new major promotion that is, and are debuting imminently, or they have been regularly appearing and are generally considered to be signed without such being announced. So when you look at Kamille, Jacob Fatu, and Motor City Machine Guns, I would say for the most part, they all fit that description. On the first part of the general understanding is that they are signed to a promotion and should Booking barring, of course, should be debuting fairly soon in their new promotion.
Yep. So based off of that, I think they're all S tier. I agree with them all. I think they're all going to be debuting somewhere. Kamille probably in AEW, Jacob Fatu probably in WWE, and Motor City Machine Guns probably in AEW. And every single indication we've gotten is that they're either already signed or about to be signed. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that all three of those make sense.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's where we get into the A tier then. We just have one person now. It's a very lonely tier right now. It is Erick Rowan, formerly of WWE, perhaps soon to be again with WWE. We went over him last week when we added him to the tier list, so there's probably not a lot more to add. And also, that's why he didn't move this week.
Yep, I think nothing's changed. He's probably going to WWE. We just don't have anything definitive yet, but
Mhm.
that seems to be the case.
Yeah. And then let's go down to B tier where we don't have anybody new in B tier, but some people that we might have a little note to add about what's happened over the past week with them. So let me just run through and read all of the names and then we can hit on the people because I think a majority of them we have possibly something to say on. First up on B tier, we have Grizzled Young Veterans. We have Shelton Benjamin, Mustafa Ali, Thekla, Katsuhiko Nakajima, and Ricky Starks. Which one of those do you want to talk about, Doug?
Well, I think the first one we need to talk about is the Grizzled Young Veterans
Mm-hmm.
because since the voting has, I mean, I don't know, since the voting, did they announce that Collision match after we started voting?
No.
So we knew that beforehand?
Yes. And it was a discussion that was had amongst committee members before we made any votes for this
Mhm.
week. I was the one actually that started that conversation. I just wanted to get a gauge for people of how they're feeling on where Grizzled Young Veterans are on the tier list right now. The consensus seemed to be people felt that where they're positioned right now on the tier list in B tier, which means we believe a talent signing to a new major promotion is considered probable, but there's still some chance that they'll, continue their independent status or continue on with their current promotion. Most people were feeling like that's a pretty apt description of where the Grizzled Young Veterans are right now, given the information that we have right now.
I think I
Yeah.
could see that mainly because this is also a lot of times how WWE operate or not WWE, how AEW operates,
Mm-hmm.
where they'll bring someone in completely unsigned, give them a match, see how they, jive in the promotion, how they just feel backstage, and then they go from there. That's happened with countless acts.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
would not be surprised if that's what this is. They're coming in, they're gonna probably lose,
I
and
don't
then
know.
well, here, if they don't lose, then I'm probably going to be nominating them to be moved up to A tier because if they're coming in and beating, it's the acclaimed, right?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
acclaim
Yeah, if
to
they're coming
just
in if
lost
they're
their
coming
trios
in
belts.
if they come in and beat the acclaimed, I'm pretty confident they have some type of deal at that point. So we'll find out.
Yeah, I would say that if they win, this is that one area where booking might be more of a sign of what's actually going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Because yeah, if they're coming in for one allegedly for one match and they beat a talent who just were champions in your promotion, I think that might be a sign that they might be sticking around. I don't know why.
Yeah. So
Um,
that's all I got to say about them. I have no issue with the where we're at on that. That
yeah,
works.
I'm very intrigued to see what happens tonight. Well, it's tonight for our purposes when we're recording this on Collision. But hey, when you're listening to this, you'll probably know exactly. You're probably yelling while you're in your car right now at us about not having them either way too high or way too low. So thank you for all of you listening right now.
Yep.
Who else do we have that has some interesting notes? Well, Mustafa Ali, we had the Windy City Riot match. He was wanting, it seems, to do Best of the Super Juniors, isn't being booked for that. Not much else about what's going on with him. Oh, he retained his title at Rebellion. That's the other interesting thing, I suppose. So it seems to me that he's going to be continuing on with how he's been, in relation to these promotions. What do you think, Doug?
I think he's one of these guys that honestly just doesn't have a whole lot of reason to rush into anything serious. He can
Yeah.
he could work the indies. He's known as a pretty good commodity. I'm not really concerned with watching him imminently jump anywhere. I think what he's got going right now is working for him. He's going to keep doing uh, this TNA run. He'll work New Japan one-offs every now and then, and yeah, that's all he's got to do for now. I don't think he necessarily needs to make any adjustments.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that there's a little bit of commonality in the way that he is approaching signing with major promotions. Similarly, I think to what Grizzled Young Veterans have been doing, where they've been popping up in a bunch of either major or we could call it mid-major promotions, like TNA, like Rev Pro, places like that. Mustafa Ali also going and doing dates with New Japan. So I think that this is an interesting strategy from somebody like that. It's really increasing their worth, I think, when looking at possible contracts from major promotions.
Yes. So next we have someone else who made some news within the last well, like 6
12
hours.
hours,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's Thekla,
Yeah.
who
Uh
made her return to Stardom at the Stardom pay-per-view last night. Uh
yes.
has attacked and take it as attacked Mina Shirakawa or is about to attack me. What happened
So
exactly? I didn't
so
get
I
to see it
watched the
yet.
pay-per-view, so let me recap it. It was All-Star Grand Queendom 2024. There was a match between Mina Shirakawa and Tora. Natsuko Tora is the leader of Otakai. Mina Shirakawa is the leader of Venus or X Nexus Venus or whatever they're calling it nowadays. They changed the name. Feels
Empress Nexus Venus.
Yes, that's the full title. It was a really weird match. It was a 10-minute match that a lot of people noted that it felt kind of like a House of Torture match with all the interruptions and interference. The match ended in a no contest as members of EXV and of Odatai both just ran into the ring and started beating each other up. Then comes Thekla walking out to the ring. Everybody's like, "Oh yeah, she is supposed to join Venus. Yeah, that's what's gonna happen." And then she beats up Mina. So she gives a little promo. I think that you have some of the notes from things that she had said in the promo. But yeah, it was kind of like mentioning things about Stardom opening up to the world, and I think that she might have had a little bit of a message to somebody that left Stardom.
Yeah, she had definitely took some shots at Giulia,
Mm-hmm.
with her everyone loved DDM and things like that, and take shots at DDM, her former faction that was run by Giulia, and then
Mm-hmm.
she talked about wanting to eradicate idol culture,
Mm-hmm.
and thus she's going after the wrestlers who I would guess I would characterize more as cupcake wrestlers, the ones who are very smiley and happy with and typically idols. And so that's what's going on now. So we're gonna see where she goes from here, but doesn't sound like she's someone who's imminently leaving Stardom, to say the least. But it does at the same time, it does also sound like she's someone who, you know, if she did, she's not going to leave for Marigold at this
No,
point. So
no,
I think that this could blend into her maybe popping up in other promotions, especially if she's feuding with Mina, who's currently in AEW. Yeah, I could see that blending over there, especially with this Anna Jay thing. Who knows where that's going? Anna Jay is already kind of doing this feud with Mina. Wouldn't
yeah,
shock me to see
she
Thekla and Anna Jay doing something together.
uh,
No, it would not. Having said that, I think Thekla is probably staying in Stardom for at least for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, so two notes there. Commentary even I was listening to the English commentary track. Commentary even mentioned Anna Jay by name as talking about what Mina has been up to recently. They didn't say all of the names of everybody else that she was doing matches in. They didn't mention Mariah May or Tony Storm, which kind of interesting, but they mentioned Anna Jay. So there might be something there with Anna, what we've been talking about for the past few weeks in our RossyWatch segments of things regarding Stardom World. But yeah, also Thekla had an interview with a publication, I believe from Austria. It was written in German. where she was talking about how she enjoys Japanese culture, but she also doesn't really like, and it's things that echoed in her promo. She doesn't really like the restrictions and expectations of people for you to retire at a certain age and to be not married and other ideal cultural kind of things. So this kind of echoes something that she was saying in an interview, which makes it, you think maybe the interview was, quasi kayfabe. But she was also mentioning that, she could see herself going to the US at some point, because that would be where the wind would blow for somebody that doesn't really like those kinds of parts of the wrestling culture in Japan. But she, by and large, likes wrestling in Japan.
Yeah, and notably, she's essentially echoing Kenny Omega's comments.
Yes, yeah, it's a lot of similar vibes from people that are within this new axis, I would say, between the AEW Stardom kind of world of things and the people versus the people that left Stardom. There seems to be a lot of agreement in the comments that they've been making recently. And also, just to mention, with the show last night from Stardom, they had Aja Kong on the show. She was in a tag match where she beat Tam Nakano. So that was, I believe, the first time that Aja Kong has ever appeared in Stardom.
Is that true?
I went through the cage match and I could not find a single match that she had ever done in Stardom. She's done 3 matches in AEW, but I never found one from Stardom.
Why do I feel like I've seen her in Stardom?
I think that she did some stuff like just to promote this match right before in the run up. But yeah, it's also, you have Sareee appeared on the pay-per-view in a match, and she's a freelancer at the current moment, and she's going to be doing a date with Marigold coming up even still. So
yeah, and you know what? I think that this has shown that she's probably going to continue to just be a freelancer for a while.
Probably.
Which, good for her. That's fine. I mean, she probably should. There's no reason for her to commit.
Yeah, in the post-match after her excellent match with Mayu Iwatani, which I think is going to get a lot of praise in the reviews from the wrestling world. They both talked after the match in the ring, and Sareee was saying, that she would love to come back and compete again for the IWGP Women's Belt, which could just be, you're saying it because you're saying it. But it was interesting that they let her have the mic after losing in a match. So it was an interesting pay-per-view from the perspective of, this is a big change for Stardom, I think, bringing in all of these freelance talent and working with other promotions, and it felt like a different kind of Stardom show.
Well, and I'm going to keep an eye on Sareee for a while, just because I'm curious what she's going to do. But I think we're definitely at a situation where Stardom is going to be looking a little bit different than it has in the past, and that's fine. And I'll watch this. I'm going to watch the show probably on Wednesday once it pops up on Stardom World, because it usually takes like 4 days.
Yeah.
So once it's up there, I'll watch it. So until then, we'll see what happens with Stardom.
Yeah, we might have more to talk about with Thekla and Sareee next week.
Yeah. So then the rest of the B tier, Nakajima and Ricky Starks, I don't really have anything to add on them. Do you?
Nope, nothing else to add with them. Nothing really to add with Shelton Benjamin. I think he's booked for it was a Progress show, I think it was, in the UK coming up, but there's nothing really going on with him either.
I think he did a one shot in Australia. So Shelton's never been one to, do the indie grind, and I don't necessarily expect him to do that now. So he's probably just kind of waiting for a deal.
But
that's fine.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to C tier.
Yes. So C tier, we have had somebody added to C tier this week, somebody that's debuting on the tier list even this week. First up, just going to run through all the names that have stayed in C tier this entire time. We have Kevin Owens, Leo Rush, Matt Hardy, and Sheamus. Those are those first 4 names. Do you have any thoughts on any of those 4 before we head into and dive a little bit deeper into the other 2?
No, Sheamus re-debuted, but I don't know if that necessarily means anything. So he's there.
And then Matt Hardy is I think the interesting one, because he appeared in TNA, but he was very assured in his social media to point out, I am still a free agent. So, um,
I just want to say this. So yes, he is C tier right now. I don't think he's going. He's waiting around because he wants a deal from
yeah.
WWE or AEW that is, the money he wants. I don't know. I think there's more chance that he'd get one from WWE than AEW at this point. He'll
Mhm.
get a deal from AEW. It's just probably not the one that he wants because he said he had a deal like on the table. He could have signed it, right?
Yeah. He
Yeah.
said that he had a deal from AEW.
Yeah, and he just didn't sign it because it probably wasn't what he wanted. And I don't think that AEW is going to budge on that because I don't think Matt necessarily at this stage is going to have a whole lot more to offer to the company. I
Mhm.
think he's in TNA. He's going to be in TNA, whether he's signed or not. So I think it's only a matter of time before he just commits there, and probably for more money than he's getting on this per appearance, pay per appearance that he's probably on right now.
Mhm.
So I will say I think that he should be higher than C.
Yeah, I my feeling on it was that I thought that C was appropriate, given the fact that it doesn't seem like it's necessarily a change from how
Yeah.
things were before.
And
Um,
to be clear, I did vote to delete him, but
yeah,
I'll be honest, I was not aware at the time that he said don't have a contract. So that was an error on my part. So with that caveat in mind, I'd probably still go higher than C.
hmm so somebody that dropped down this week was Seth Rollins. He was in B tier previously. He's currently in C tier. Kind of a similar situation to Kevin Owens, and it's in that same milieu of conversation that we were having a little bit earlier about Becky Lynch and Finn Balor, where they're these people that are major high talent on WWE with contracts that are impendingly ending. Of course, Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch's contracts are ending within the next 2 months. So Seth Rollins down to C tier. Do you have any thoughts on that, Doug?
Yeah, I would say that he is now where he should be. Like I
Mm-hmm.
always thought B was way too high for him. I think that he is at best a 50-50. I don't think he's necessarily leaning towards leaving. If anything, he's leaning towards staying.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that C is where I would put him.
Yeah,
So I think he is appropriately placed at this time.
yeah. I generally agree with that assessment on that. I think that's the case for all of the remaining upper carders of WWE that are still on the tier list right now at this point. When we're looking at Kevin Owens, Seth Rollins, and Becky Lynch, I think that the re-signing of Finn Balor does send a message that WWE is taking this seriously again about
Mhm.
re-signing these folks. I would temper that slightly by pointing out that Finn got the contract and these other people have not yet gotten the contract. It's possible that that was the biggest one that they're trying to offer, or it was the easiest one that they could get re-signed. We don't know yet. But I think that when you consider the comments, and this is something that I find very intriguing still, is that Seth Rollins is in C tier, Becky Lynch is in D tier. Becky Lynch is the one that has been saying, I know my worth, and has been talking kind of about free agency. And Seth Rollins has not been really talking about free agency. So I still find it very interesting that they are kind of opposite tiers from where I would think that they would logically be then. I think that they're both either C or D, but I think that they probably should be probably the same tier in my opinion. But that's my view.
I agree. And then I would also say that looking at the next person, we have some discussion to have.
Yeah, so this week there was an additional release that WWE made in their little batch of releases that included folks like Jinder Mahal and Veer Mahin. They also released Cameron Grimes. Now, it wasn't clear at the point of the release whether or not this was a separate release or part of the batch. It's been noted by some reporters that WWE is not proactively announcing to the public that they're releasing people anymore. They're letting the talent announce that they've been released. That's the line that we've been told, at least. So it's possible that there are other people that have been released and we just don't know yet. It's possible that Cameron Grimes was part of that batch of releases from last week and we only found out about it this week. Regardless of that, he has been now added to the tier list in C tier. Doug, I am someone who does not understand why Cameron Grimes is on the tier list. Could you please make the case for why Cameron Grimes has been added to the tier list?
Absolutely. In fact, not only am I going to make the case that he should be on the tier list, I'm going to make the case that he is not high enough on the tier list.
That's spicy.
Yes. Cameron Grimes, the former Cameron Grimes and the current Trevor Lee, is someone who I think is quite possibly now poised to be the hottest act on the indies. I would compare him to Mustafa Ali in the sense that Mustafa Ali is B tier, meaning that he's, likely to sign somewhere, more than not sign somewhere. Cameron Grimes is going to do the grind. He's done the grind before. He is someone who has always been an indie darling, even before he signed. There was a time where when he was in TNA, he was making these jokes. Like he would go on the indies and talk about his $1 million TV deal, in tongue in cheek because it was a TNA deal. But he was everywhere. I mean, he was a PWG guy. He was someone who is, and this is before he went to WWE. He's probably gotten a lot better since then. So to me, if we're looking at Mustafa Ali as someone who's at B tier, Cameron Grimes should be that at least.
Okay.
And then I'll have something else to add as well with him, but I'll pass it to you now and let you kind of give your case.
No, I want to hear what your last point was, actually.
Okay. No, the last point is going to be a caveat on something he did that I think this is also going to be a little bit of a spicy take. Something he did that I think might hurt him. So he gave that really emotional and heartfelt video message right after finding out that he got released, where he was very clearly speaking from the heart and emotionally about how WWE was the only place he wanted to be and how this was his dream and that he's going to show them how with the mistake they made, which generally it would be a good thing to do, except the problem is he really came across in that video to me as someone that is going to feel like anything but WWE is just going to feel like a second choice. And I think in the current environment, in the current climate that we find ourselves in, that is not something you should be trying to convey, especially if you want to go to AEW, because AEW has had now for years issues with people who have just gone there and have been kind of problems because it was their second choice and they were really just there because they got cut elsewhere. We saw that shortly in 2020, 2021 during the COVID cuts, where a lot of people ended up going to AEW, but for a lot of reasons they didn't want to be there once Triple H took over. I don't think that is the kind of message you want to send when you'd like to get signed somewhere, because I think there's a perception war going on right now between AEW and WWE. And when you are signing people that there's a perception that you are the second choice for them, that looks bad on the company. And I don't think that they want to have that. And that's why I think AEW fans in general like it when someone has a chip on their shoulder and they want to prove someone wrong. But I think right now in this environment, they don't want someone to come in, prove that person wrong just to go back there. I think that is that's just how we're at. That's just where we're at right now. It's the world we're in wrestling. It's not his fault. It's not, and I'm not faulting him for making the video. I just think that it didn't come across the way that maybe he wanted it to.
Yeah.
At least for me. So that's my thoughts on it.
I would say just to react to that part first, two things. One, I think that for people of a certain age, and I think that Cameron Grimes is within that certain age, he is 30 years old, or Trevor Lee, or whatever we're gonna call him now, his mystery name. Um, I think for people of a certain age, it's not weird to say that WWE was your dream destination. It's just not. Like there have been people that have really shown up in other promotions and been pushed very highly and show themselves as real, I could call troopers for their promotions now, that have said in interviews that their dream when they were growing up was going to WWE. So I don't fault him for feeling that way whatsoever. It's a very different environment, and for it's his opinion too, for that matter, how he feels about it. I do understand why you would give pause to that in his chances of showing up in and signing with a different major promotion at this time in this environment. Because, yeah, as you pointed out, AEW has had some issues over the past 4 years with people that have been specifically cut by WWE and have gone to AEW. Now, a lot of those, of course, were people that were cut by a previous regime, and then when the new regime that they liked came back, then they wanted to go back. So Andrade, great example of that. Miro seems to be possibly an example of that. So there are some people that have had some issues in AEW due to those kinds of things. But that was in a situation of it's two different regimes within WWE that are changing between the two.
Yep.
All of that being said, my feeling on Cameron Grimes, and this might be a similar feeling that I have for somebody else coming up here when we get down to D tier, is I'm not so sure about there being enough interest from like multiple major promotions. I'm not confident in him imminently joining one of those promotions. Like if you're saying that he's going to probably be, doing the grind on the indies, then it's like, well, that's not signing with a major promotion, So I think that that's where I'm kind of coming down on it, is looking at it as, well, he could have a great run on the indies now and show up and show people that, this is who I am and this is why you should have me. That's something that plenty of people have done in the past and gone on from there to sign with a major promotion. Or return to WWE for that matter, but I'm not seeing the potential interest, a high level interest from like multiple companies enough that I feel confident in putting him highly on the tier list.
I think he's going to have a similar trajectory as Mustafa Ali, which is why I would probably put him at B tier at minimum, because that's where Ali is at. And I think that they are more or less going to follow the same trajectory. They're going to follow the same, schedule. And I think they'd probably end up in the same places if they had if he had his way.
Okay. Well, we'll find out, I suppose, sometime within the next 30 to 90 days when he's actually formally released from WWE, what actually happens. So that pretty much rounds out the C tier. Could we take a quick break for a moment just so that we can refresh our pots of coffee? And
that's exactly what I was going to suggest. And then after that, good. we can fire through D and F tier, and then that'll be it.
All right, cool. Well, we will be right back with the WrestleWatch podcast in just a moment.
Let me go get my coffee as well.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the WrestleWatch podcast. This is Ryan with a freshly brewed cup of coffee. How are you doing, Doug?
Pretty good. I think we're ready to go over D and F tier. D is the biggest tier list, but I think there's a lot of people in here we don't really have anything to say about, so I think they should go kind of quick.
Yeah, let's talk and say who all are on D tier. Doug, could you do that?
Yep. So we have on D tier, we have Malachi Black, Buddy Matthews, Matt Cardona, Dustin Rhodes, Kiyomiya, Sami Callihan, Hikuleo, Drew McIntyre, Becky Lynch, Jeff Hardy, and now Jinder Mahal.
Yeah, so the people that have joined the D tier this list, first off is Becky Lynch, who's dropped down from C tier to D tier. I think we've mostly covered everything about Becky in previous segments of this podcast. So, did you have anything else to add about Becky?
No, I think she moved down mostly because she got the title. I
Mhm.
think people saw that as maybe a sign. I don't necessarily see that as a sign. I think that's just, once again, even if she's leaving in 2 months or probably a month at this point, having a quick, putting a belt on her to transition to someone else is just going to elevate whoever the next person is.
Mhm.
So that doesn't really mean anything to me. I personally would probably have kept her at C tier, but I have zero issue with her at D tier. I think that's also a fine spot for her.
Yeah, I wanted to keep her in C tier, but I think that D tier is totally plausible as well. I think that part of the voting procedure with this week, with this vote in particular with Becky Lynch, I think that sometimes some people also were thinking about the climate of change with WWE, about how they're approaching these talent re-signing, and possibly thinking, oh wait, now they're getting serious again about re-signing the high level talent. Maybe that means it's not as likely that Becky Lynch actually tests free agency, which, of course, as mentioned before, she's the one that's mentioned possibly testing free agency of this bunch that's still on the tier list.
Yep.
So the next person that we're looking at is somebody that went up from F tier previously. Last week was Jeff Hardy. He was in F tier before. Now he's in D tier. We got some reports that his contract is imminently up in AEW.
Yeah, I had him a lot higher than D. I think that I have him at a solid A tier, to be completely honest. I think that he is someone who, the minute his contract is up, he's going to go wherever Matt is. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Matt is going back to AEW. I just feel like if he was going to do it, he would have done it by now.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
the, or at least he wouldn't have made this big debut in TNA, is now on the TNA roster page, even if he just says he doesn't have a contract, which he might not. But I still think that it's at this point it's kind of a foregone conclusion. I don't think he's going to AEW, at least not anytime soon.
Yeah.
And I think that Jeff will go wherever Matt goes. So I think that based off that, he's an A tier for me, but people think he's a D. That does move. That is, to be fair, he was at F tier before, correct?
He was previously F, yes.
So he did move up, and I understand that too. But I think at this point, it's that to me, a D tier means he's more likely to stay than to leave, and I just don't think that's true with him.
Well, I will mention that by the math, you have the spiciest take of all of the committee on this one.
Well, because once again,
So
unless people think that he is leaving, like and just not getting re-signed somewhere else, which totally fine. I mean, I understand people not wanting to sign Jeff Hardy for various reasons. I just don't think that's necessarily going to happen,
well,
especially
well,
with TNA is still considered a landing point in terms of the tier list.
well, Doug, you just said exactly what my position is. I don't know if Jeff Hardy is going to actually get signed anywhere else. Uh, I don't have confidence in that happening. I have confidence in Jeff Hardy leaving AEW. I think though. I think that that's where we agree, at least on that half of things, and that's the first half of the conversation of them moving on to a new company. You have to leave your current company. Makes sense, but I think that Jeff has too much baggage to possibly get signed long term. He's definitely not going to get signed to WWE unless they have a real serious talk about his risk factors. Let's just put it like that. I think that TNA is a possible landing spot for him, just as it is possibly for Matt Hardy. As we've noted before, we have not removed Matt Hardy from the tier list because he doesn't seem to have a long-term deal with TNA at the current moment. When you mentioned that about the roster page, the interesting thing about that was Matt Hardy's photo on the roster page is an old photo, whereas the photos that they added for Santana and Sami Callihan, who we might mention a little bit about in a moment here, those were new photos that were just taken this weekend. So that was something that signaled to me a little bit before we even heard Matt Hardy say, I don't have a contract long term. I'm a free agent. That was a canary to me of there seems to be something different about Matt Hardy in TNA versus Santana or even Sami Callihan in TNA. Sami Callihan was another person that was up for vote this week, just to put that out there. And our committee decided to keep him at the D tier at the current moment. Doug, how do you feel about my thoughts about Jeff Hardy and then possibly transition into Sami Callihan there?
I think it's totally fair. I guess in my mind, I just think that that is not enough reason for TNA not to go after him.
Yeah, I guess that's fair enough. Yeah.
That would be my stance on it. But we'll see. We will see.
Yeah, I think that he's in the general B to D zone. He's in that 50-50 land, as it were. I don't think that he's staying in AEW, and I'm nowhere near confident enough, nor do I think that there's enough news yet to say he's above a B tier kind of a guy. I don't think.
Okay.
So Sami Callihan appeared at TNA's Rebellion pay-per-view as well. There was kind of buzz about him possibly going to AEW like 6 or 7 months ago, and then it just never happened. He kind of stayed around on the indies. He did dates and was doing a PPA with MLW, Major League Wrestling. Now he seems to be doing some dates with TNA because it's not been announced. It's been specifically announced that it is not a long-term deal akin to how it is with Santana. So that's just the update on Sami Callihan there.
To me, Sami Callihan is a textbook. This is a textbook case of a guy who tested free agency and it just didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's why he is back in TNA. I think that, and I think that's different from Santana because I think Santana maybe did sign long term and he is perhaps doing it because he's going to get a big push.
Yeah.
I don't think that's necessarily the case with Sami Callihan. I think, as you said, he was at free agency. He tried to get into AEW. I'm guessing that Mox was the one who was trying to get him into AEW.
Mm-hmm.
He also is someone who spent a lot of time just trying to test the waters other places, and now he's back in TNA. So I think that kind of shows back in TNA on another short-term deal, if
Mm-hmm.
there's a deal at all. So that says how well that went.
So transition to the last person that we want to talk about here on D tier. It's Jinder Mahal. He was one of the releases from WWE last week. He has been added to the tier list this week in D tier. Now, I think that we disagree on this. This is another person that I am not so confident on him being on the tier list. I am not so confident on him getting interest from like multiple major promotions. I'm not so confident on him moving to one of those promotions long term. I'm not so confident on it happening anytime soon. Additionally, because he is, still 90 days out due to how WWE structures their releases. Doug, I believe that you actually had Jinder slotted. You wanted him to be in C tier.
Yes.
So let's go back to our previous segment about Cameron Grimes. Doug, please explain Jinder Mahal to me.
Sure. So before we do that, I want to go back and talk about when Jinder Mahal was released the first time. He
Mm-hmm.
was not world champion yet. He had not really had much of a run in TNA at all. So then when he did go back, when he did get cut, he didn't really go anywhere. He worked like
Well,
a couple one-shot indies here and there, but there wasn't really anyone clamoring for Jinder Mahal. So based off of that, you would think that, well, why is he on the tier list? Because he got cut again. Why would this change? Why would this change at all? Why would it be any different? And I get that. However, I would argue that I do think that he did, you know, however you want to think about his last run, he was the world champion for a short time.
mm-hmm.
He is now a former WWE world champion. I mean, this may be, controversial to say too, but based off of how they do the criteria, he might be a future WWE Hall of Famer. I mean, he main evented pay-per-views as the world champion. There's nobody in that company that has done that and isn't a future Hall of Famer. I think he's that maybe that speaks more to the criteria for the WWE Hall of Fame than anything, but to me, he's kind of built himself up a decent amount over this last run to the point where I do think that some people might take a shot with him. I think that he could very well be a TNA guy. Do I think AEW is going to pick him up? No, I don't think they will. I don't, and mainly because I don't think their audience is going to be too keen on a Jinder Mahal. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
I think that is a promotion where you really need to be either strong on your character, strong on the mic skills, strong in ring, and he's just really not in any of those areas.
Yeah, so his previous time that he got released from WWE was in 2014. He then jumped around to a few indies. He did Reality of Wrestling. He did a match or two in Japan for Inoki Jino Federation. So yes, since that time, when he returned to WWE in 2016, he did then go on to being a WWE champion and a US champion. I will also point out that in 2017, when he had that run, PWI gave him two awards. One was Most Improved Wrestler. The other one was Most Hated Wrestler. Wrestling
And
Observer newsletter gave him Most Overrated. So while it could be looked at as possible criteria for the WWE Hall of Fame, his run, I'm not as certain of how much interest other promotions might have in him. Now, of course, yes, he did have a world title reign, and there was famously earlier this year the "Don't Hinder the Jinder" movement. We could call it a movement.
yeah, it's
Um,
one of these ironic movements where I'm not a
yeah,
big fan of these. We're gonna ironically get behind someone. It's like,
and that's I don't like speaking negatively about talent on the podcast. I try to avoid that, and I'm not saying that I dislike Jinder Mahal. But I am worried that there is part of the interest in him, or part of the buzz about him going to other promotions, might be the meme. It might
yeah,
be the meme.
it's just an irony push.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think that that's not necessarily enough for me to put him on the tier list, but I respect people that went through your analysis, Doug, and thought about the fact that he is in a higher position than he was the last time that he was released by WWE. So it does make total sense that a promotion like a TNA might look at him, or even if I don't know about Ring of Honor, but I think a promotion of that level, TNA Ring of Honor kind of level promotion, it is feasible that one of those kinds of promotions could go and say, "Hey, let's give him a shot."
yeah. And to be clear, I personally have him at a C. So I'm not like saying that he's a lock to go anywhere. That's a 50-50 position. And the only reason he's a 50-50 position is because I feel he's elevated himself. Otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
I would have him lower. But and as the committee says, they felt it is lower and they have him at D. And I have no problem with him at D. I think that's fine.
Well, let's jump into the F tier then, Doug. How about we just hit through these? And there's been no changes to F tier this week, so this will be an easy hot shot to just go through these folks. How about we start with the last person and work our way over to the left, because the one on the left is actually the person that has something to talk about.
Yeah. So we have Nikki Bella, which I don't really have anything to add. And then
Mhm.
we have Natalia. Once again, I don't really have anything that
There's nothing new.
there's supposedly smoke, but I don't know that there's much smoke. El Phantasmo, Hook, nothing's really changed. He's exploring free agency. We already kind of talked about that.
Yeah,
Utami Hayashishita, who is now in Marigold. I still want to wait to see what Marigold ends up being. Let's wait till they have a show.
yeah,
And then Daniel Garcia, and then finally Sareee.
yeah. So Sareee, I think we mentioned this in the previous segment. Sareee was on the Stardom pay-per-view last night. She had an amazing match with Mayu Iwatani. I think that it's going to get a lot of buzz and a lot of people talking about it through the rest of the year. Um, but the interesting thing, of course, to note here is that she has been doing dates now with Stardom. She's done this date with Stardom. She is booked for a date with Marigold, which is intriguing. I would say that they're the most competitive of promotions in Japan at the current moment. When you look at, like the United Japan landscape, whereas Marigold's not even in that. But she also mentioned, and this might have been kayfabe in Ring, about wanting to come back to Stardom and to compete again. I think that it's possible that she continues as a freelancer, but I think that this is going to be, especially this match, is going to generate a lot of buzz about her and the possibility of promotions wanting to get her signed up long term.
And then I will watch it on Wednesday because as I said before, I watch Stardom usually on a delay. I don't usually pay for the pay-per-views. Maybe like once a year I will. I just wait till they go up on Stardom World, which usually takes about 4 or 5 days. And then I'll watch it then. But I think that I said before, I think she's someone who, because I don't really know what the Sukeban thing is. Nobody does.
Nobody does.
She obviously had a bad run in WWE, and it was not her fault. But she is someone who has the name recognition now. She freelances a lot in Japan before and after her WWE run. And, clearly she was someone who was open to, moving to America and being a U.S. wrestler.
Yeah.
So I understand that her last run, maybe left a bad taste in her mouth, but I don't think that's necessarily going to signal that she's not going to try again. So I'm fine with her being at F tier, but because I think that all indications are that that's not happening anytime soon. She's going to stay in Japan, it looks like, for the time being. She's going to freelance all these different promotions. As we saw, she's working Marigold and Stardom. So based off of that, I think F tier is totally fine and appropriate.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add to that, but I would say once you watch that match, I think you're going to understand my position of saying that I think that this could be a moment that's going to give her a lot more eyes looking at her and wanting to sign her.
I look forward to watching it, and I will give my thoughts. No, I won't give my thoughts on it next week, but I will.
Yeah, we were gonna switch to a review podcast next week.
I don't think we want to do that. I don't want to be a review podcast.
But
I will watch it. I will watch it on Wednesday regardless.
Okay, so we're not gonna do RossyWatch as a new podcast where we only review Japanese Joshi wrestling that's related to Rossy. We're not gonna do that.
Oh, that would be great to do, though, wouldn't it?
I think our format is pretty good as it is.
Yes, I agree.
So
speaking of our format, I think we've now completed it.
I think that is very factual and a good take there, Doug. Finally, a good take from you today.
Yes.
Right. So, yeah.
So with that, thank you very much, everybody. This has been the WrestleWatch podcast, the only podcast that covers pro wrestling free agency. We will be talking again next week and talking about all the moves. But until then, everyone, you have a great week.
Yes, have a great week, everybody.